Clerk, call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here. Don't wake him up over here. I was reading something. Well, I understand that, but you know.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4. Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Director Coleman Ford from the Southwestern Seminary. Thank you so much for coming out. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Thank you, Judge Whitley. Before our prayer, reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10. Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, "How hard is it for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God?" The disciples were astonished at his words. Again, Jesus said to them, "Children, how hard it is to enter the kingdom of God. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." They were even more astonished, saying to one another, "Then who can be saved?" Looking at them, Jesus said, "With man it is impossible, but not with God, because all things are possible with God." Let's pray. Most holy God, we come to you now, and we all believe we are rich in our own eyes. We have all sought to acquire wealth, riches, both physical riches, but also professional, spiritual riches that we think make ourselves great. But Lord, we know in your eyes those things do not matter. Those things do not add to our worth, but we are worthy because we are made in your image. We are worthy because we have been created by the one true God. And as Jesus has said, Lord, there are, Lord, many who are seeking after you in ways, Lord, that are not true. So would you convict our hearts today as we stand in this place, as we interact in this forum here, to know that the things that we do, the things that we have, ultimately, Lord, are, Lord, just things that pass away like chaff, that the wind drives away, but the things that are true and eternal, Lord, come from you. And as the scriptures say, the things that are impossible with man are possible with you, God. So would we lay down our preferences today? Would we lay down the things that we think make us great, make us honorable, and rather seek after the things that are truly great, that are truly worthy of honor, and that is knowing you, the one true God. So Lord, would you give us a spirit of humility today? Would you give us a spirit of camaraderie today, that we would prefer other people before ourselves, that we would seek to love other people as ourselves, and that when we fail to do that, which we inevitably will, would we look to Jesus Christ, the one who perfectly loved, the one who perfectly served, the one who perfectly sacrificed himself for us. We also pray for our communities today, Lord, the things that are burdening our hearts today. Lord, would you go before us and give us wisdom, give us insight, help us to see what is true and good. Would you help us to find ways to serve better, more fruitfully, that the communities around us, that the people that we serve and the people that we represent would flourish, would thrive, and would find hope and joy, and that our communities would be bolstered by the work that we do here today. And again, nothing that we can do can happen on our own power. So would you help us to trust you, trust in your wisdom, trust in your word today. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Director.
Manius, agenda announcements?
We do not have any agenda announcements, but we'd like to take this opportunity to ask Dr. Tanasia to come forward and introduce a new member of our team.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court.
We doing the Corona wave now?
Yes, sir, we're doing the Corona wave, that's for sure. So we have a new Deputy Director for Public Health, Miss Angela Hagee. She joins us from Milwaukee Health Department, has about 20 years of public health experience. She started yesterday, and we intend to keep her around. So help us with that, please. So everybody, please welcome Angie Hagee.
Vinny, it seems to be a regular thing with our public health department that we get new top management when there's a public health emergency. It seems to me that you showed up a week before the Ebola virus. And now we've got this young lady right as Corona hits. I take that as an omen because the last one worked out well. And, we welcome you and hope that you bring glad tidings to the people of Tarrant County.
Thanks again, welcome. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of March 3rd.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus.
Yes. I have a resolution today for the Junior League of Fort Worth celebrating its 90th anniversary. So I would like to read this. Whereas the 10 founding members were officially accepted into the National Association of the Junior Leagues of America Incorporated, becoming the Junior League of Fort Worth on March 6, 1920. Whereas success over the past 90 years has been proven with true commitment to the organization's mission, promoting volunteerism, developing the potential of women, and impacting the community through the effective action and leadership of trained volunteers. Whereas today, more than 2,000 members strong, the Junior League of Fort Worth generously supports many local organizations through volunteerism and grants totaling more than $500,000 reinvested into the Fort Worth community during 2019 and 2020. Whereas the long-term legacy of this 90-year organization of women comprised of many backgrounds, ages, and interests has provided the chance to spark possibilities in Fort Worth for generations. It has been the past, it is the present, and it will be the future of the Junior League of Fort Worth, a membership organization committed to making things better and to doing it together. Now, therefore, be resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, congratulate the Junior League of Fort Worth on the organization's 90th anniversary and commend the members for their continued support and service to our community. And witness hereof, we have hereunto set our hand and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be effective this 10th day of March 2020. And I know we have some people here, and I'm going to come down there in just a moment, but I wanted to go over a couple things that the Junior League has been involved with this year that are very significant in their commitment to our community. Cook's Children's Health Foundation has been granted $90,000 from the Junior League of Fort Worth. Historic Fort Worth, which will also receive $90,000, and volunteers to assist with a number of their projects from the Junior League. And here's one close to home. JPS Foundation was chosen to receive $90,000 also. So they have been, for our, and 6 volunteers to assist with the NICU supplemental nutrition program. So we want to thank them, and I understand that Ashley Fear is the president.
And you want to move its approval too,
And we
don't you?
will move for its approval. And we have a second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
We have also some members here that are with the Junior League.
Y'all stand. Y'all stand.
And Ashley, hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Thank you for this honor.
Let me give you this,
Wonderful.
and if you will, Devin's gonna come around here also, and we'll get her to. Okay, you'd like to
Good, thank you.
have a few words?
We would just like to say thank you for this honor during Women's History Month and for recognizing the League and its contributions for 90 years. We are proud to serve this county, we are proud to serve this city, and we're proud to be a part of great things happening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to, Mayfest is one of your biggest,
Yes, sir.
Vinnie, get this virus gone before we get to Mayfest.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
if I may, this past Saturday, the county clerk's office, in conjunction with the Department of State, conducted Passport Day at the Dion Phillips Bagsby Southwest Courthouse. From what I could tell, it was a very successful event. When I got there about 9:30 for a 10 o'clock opening, there was a line wrapping around the building out into the parking lot. I'd like to ask Ms. Nicholson to come up and tell us just how successful it was.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank facilities because they are the ones that have to make that happen. Constable Siegel's office, he was there to provide security in addition to my staff that, took their Saturday. We paid them, but they take their Saturday from their family to do this. It was extremely successful. I think we processed over 75 applications. Nobody was turned away. We shut that down at 3 o'clock and then processed on. And, the Department of State is very, they're working well with this, and they're looking forward to us continuing these at the other sub-courthouses. So it's been a great, and I think next time we perhaps, Judge, may look at adding more staff rather than just using the 3 we have. We may start adding maybe 6, and I think we'll have that conversation with the feds. And if they let us, then we'll be able to do that, and we'll probably look at it probably at Northeast where we tend to have a lot of people. But thank you, Commissioner Brooks, for coming out. It's a great service, and we did 25,000 applications last year, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
Yes. Well, as some of you may know and perhaps participated in events on Sunday, which is Women's International, International Women's Day, rather. And so I had the honor of participating in a great event with the League of Women Voters, and just want to make sure that we recognize that day. Of course, we know that March is Women's History Month, so there's more to come from my office regarding that, and also save the date for our 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And the League asked that I share with the listening audience that they have a Centennial Gala coming up on Thursday. I believe it's Thursday, March 20th. March 20th is definitely the day. And they will recognize past members of the community, rather, that served in elected office, as well as current electeds, 3 women who are Democrats and 3 women who are Republicans. So you can visit their website. Again, that's the League of Women Voters in their 19th Amendment Centennial Gala. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Figgis, do you have anything? Okay, with that, then we will Move on to the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 3 additional items for you this morning. Item number 1, we're requesting that the court approve a request from the L. Clifford Davis Legal Association to amend the county's fee schedule for qualified candidates during a 2 days of expunction non-disclosure clinic, which will be held April 25th, 2020.
This is something we've done for the past 4 or 5 years that the L. Clifford Davis Legal Society has been doing this event. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, if we can go to item number 2, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve Correction Software Solutions as a sole source for automated case management services for the Tarrant County Community Supervision and Corrections Department. You'll also find in this court communication an order from the criminal judges in Tarrant County making this request and authorizing the Director of CSCD to make this acquisition. We are asking that you approve this request, plus that we make the order a part of this court communication and order of the court.
Why would we want to do that?
Because there's a requirement that that the judges ask the district clerk to notify the Commissioners Court of the order, and the only way we can accept that or make us aware of that is when we sit as a body, and so we can either receive and file or simply make it a part of this order.
We're clear that a request is not an order.
That's correct. The deal is style order. That's why.
Okay. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, on item number 3, Mr. Singleton is going to address the court on that issue.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jay.
Today we're asking you to review and consider some amendments to the vehicle usage policy. First of all, item 4 under mileage reimbursements regarding some clarification of commute miles. The policy is actually staying the same, but we've rewritten it to try to provide clarity and provide examples of when commute miles are reimbursable and when they're not. So the bulk of what you have attached to your agenda item has to do with a clarification of current policy. Item 5 under that section, we're deleting that. It has to do with callback. Callback is actually addressed in civil service minutes or rules, and so we're just going to strike that so they don't end up conflicting with each other. So that's what's in the attachment you have. In your court communication, are there any questions about what's written in here so far?
If you go back and read what is in there right now, good luck. It's as confusing as anything I've seen.
So we're taking it from a narrative standpoint and trying to put examples of things. So there are 2 items that are pointed out in the court communication that are items for discussion related to other types of commute miles. I'm not sure if that's an issue right now, but the second bullet point has to do with reimbursing tolls and mileage reimbursements for employees that receive car allowances. Previously, we rewrote the vehicle use policy, did a holistic review of it in 2016. Prior to that, it had been 2001, so it was 15 years old. This was a result of an audit that the county auditor's office did, so we cleaned it up to make it clear. At that time, used to be a provision that people receiving car allowance would not be eligible for mileage reimbursements within Tarrant County. That was taken out. But there's been a question whether we need to put that back in, but make it the 13-county region of the North Central Texas Council of Governments.
16 counties.
16, okay.
Will you
I put
repeat
13.
that? I think I missed something.
I think what it, let me, because when I was looking at some of this just reimbursement, I said, okay, we need to really kind of maybe clean some of this up. The first is, let's talk about first the mileage reimbursement. The simplest thing that I think we can do, and we've got a couple of alternatives, but the simplest thing is we say we need to back out commuting mileage for an employee who's not receiving an allowance. So these are employees who are asked from time to time to go to different locations so they can ask for reimbursement for these business miles traveled.
Sure.
Some go, some do that all day long. Some do it, some of our community people do it frequently and may do it 2 or 3 places. I think that the simplest way of doing this, which would be the least difficult, would be to say, okay, we're going to record the miles when we leave the home in the morning, and we're going to record the miles when we get back in the evening. We're going to subtract commuting miles, and if we did some personal mileage in between, we would deduct that. And then other than that, we would list the places that we had gone during the day. But other than that, that's it. We don't have to worry about keeping okay, here was my mileage from the office to the COG for an RTC meeting, or then to public health or to someplace like that. We'd list those down that we went to those meetings, but it would be just a whole lot simpler if it was, here's the beginning mileage, here's the ending mileage, subtract commute, everything else is business, and here's what made up that business. The alternative to that is to basically do spot by spot, miles by miles, business purpose for business purpose. So that's the first thing. Then when it comes to allowances for people who get a car allowance, what I think we're saying is, if we're within the region, I think that should be included in the allowances that we're receiving. If you go outside of the region, so if we drive to Austin, then the deduction would be from from the courthouse to Austin, and then any incidental miles that you had while you were down there. But if you're in the region, then what we're basically saying is your allowance is covering those things in the region.
Okay. I don't know that that's what I heard you say, but you'd mentioned something about previously it was within Tarrant County. Repeat that part.
I think previously it was just Tarrant County. If you went outside of Tarrant County, then you got reimbursed for mileage like to Dallas and back. You'd get that versus it just being within
Prior
Tarrant
to
County.
2016, it was just Tarrant County.
Gotcha.
What's being discussed now is the whole COG region.
Okay.
And so the toll tag, or the tolls, that applies to both individuals who get car allowances and those that do not? Okay.
Well, that's a point of discussion. What I put in the court communication had to do with those receiving car allowances, but tolls are a burden across the board, whether it's doing travel in a personal vehicle on a trip, or whether it's doing travel within the region or within this metropolitan area. It can be either done on as a reimbursement to the person or through a travel reimbursement. We have county vehicles that also are using tolls. And the budget office handles quite a volume of those. And it's, at this point in time, our policy just says that tolls are an expense that are eligible for reimbursement. It doesn't give any guidance at all. And if we're okay with that, that's fine. I've done a little bit of research, and that's basically what most say. It's just if it's reasonable, it'll be paid.
So the auditor would simply like to say that we'd like to make this as simple as possible, because if you make it really complex, it makes it really hard. When mileage was first instituted, in my understanding, before I worked here, it was included on the timesheet and it was assigned to be responsible for ensuring that mileage was accurate in accordance with policy. Obviously, if there's a lot of trips and people are reviewing the time and they're not always focused on the mileage, don't have time to question it, then when we come along and do an audit, we can find a lot of discrepancies, and there's been a lot of confusion and discrepancy over the years. So clarification would be really beneficial for, I think, the employees and certainly the auditor's office, and I think the appointing authorities that want to make sure their information is accurate for their employees. The auditor doesn't have any opinion, nor should I, on what it is y'all wish to reimburse your employees for. But I am encouraging you to consider making it simple. What Mr. Singleton has presented to you today is an attempt to clarify what we have, but that still makes it awkward. What the judge proposed a few minutes ago is just the fact that basically you never get reimbursed for commuting miles, and you just take those out, and you don't get reimbursed for personal miles, so everywhere else you drive for anything related to county work, you're reimbursed for. That's a lot easier to keep up with than where you went at the first stop, and where you went at the second stop, and when you went home, and where you went here, etc. That makes it really hard for all of us. The other thing that I really need to ask you to consider is, at some point, whatever we do, if we change the policy, then we need to address it maybe on a prospective basis and not go back and apply it to people that have been attempting to follow what was on the books. But again, that's your call. And maybe even people that have been penalized in the past for it not being clear, that we consider even making some sort of retro reimbursement for those employees. Because there's been, I can assure you, there's things all over the place. And even the mileage allowance, there are people who are charging it, there are people who are not charging it. And I'm not trying to be judged down there and decide who gets paid for what. I just want to enforce the policy. And so I'm requesting you to consider making it simple. I'm even requesting that you not approve what Jay's presenting, because what he's presenting is not the simple example that the judge and I are speaking of, where commuting miles is simply reduced. And that seems to be fairly standard across governmental entities. The IRS doesn't intend for employees to be reimbursed for commuting miles, but does allow this whole temporary first stop location to sometimes allow commuting miles to be included and sometimes not. So anyway, that's my appeal to you, is we will enforce whatever you pass to the best of our ability, but the simpler you make it for us and for your employees, the easier it's going to be.
So let me say that our office and the auditor's office has been working on this, and we've met a bunch of times on this court communication and the wording. Our goal today is not necessarily to get an official court action on this. We gave you all something to look at and to give us direction, and we would like to, because if we add these other two bullets, or some version of those other two bullets, rather than approving something today and then coming along and approving something for the entire policy, just give us your direction, and we'll come back next week with the policy that you all direct us to do.
Well, I'm in favor of simple as well. And I like the judge's suggestion, and I would like to ask that it be adopted as the way we do business going forward.
So we'll include that in a court communication next week for the vote, okay? Because we had these other two items, and if you give us direction, that way we can put it in the policy so we can adopt the changes to the policy all in one vote.
Because on the other two items, we have some lack of clarity there too. Because it used to be a certain way, and now it's a different way. And again, I don't like to be the bad guy that goes up and says, no, you can't be reimbursed for this. Or if I start looking at various people who receive car allowance and they've been charged a bunch of mileage within town, I'm going to have to go back and ask them for money. and I don't think that's the intent. I think the intent here again is to clarify what you intend for a mileage allowance, a car allowance to include, and where you want it to apply. Again, as we stated, it used to be within county, and if you went to Dallas, you could charge mileage. At some point, I think the intent for some folks was that it be within a larger region, but again, I don't have an opinion. It's whatever the court wishes. But I think we should clarify that and then make sure that everyone who receives car allowance is appropriately notified, because we do have people that receive car allowances that have charged mileage.
And we could, I mean, if you think that the COG area of 16 counties is too large, then I think that just Tarrant County is too small, but what you might end up saying is Tarrant County and any contiguous county versus the 16.
100 miles or 80-something miles if you're going.
Is ERAF, I'm not sure ERAF is in.
16 county. ERAF, Hood.
I know Rockwall is, because we send a lot of people to Rockwall.
I would suggest contiguous counties.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
So in the order, to make things simple, will you clarify the three things that you're asking for us to provide clarification on?
First of all, it has to do with commute miles, which what's written here was actually drafted off of what the auditor's office gave me. And the removal of the callback pay provision, which is already covered in the civil service rules. Addressing, if we want to address anything more regarding tolls and mileage reimbursement for those that receive car allowances. Mileage reimbursements.
Okay, so the three things that we've talked about, if my suggestion on the commuting miles would be record your miles when you leave the house, record your miles when you get back, subtract commuting, subtract any personal miles that you've driven that day, and the rest is deductible. You do need to still show where you stopped, where you went, but you don't have to record the miles for each leg of the trip.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Don't have a problem with the emergency callback. And then with regards to those folks on allowances, what I'm saying is if anything you've got to do with on the car, whether it be miles, whether it be tolls, whatever, if you're getting an allowance, nothing would be counted if it's from Tarrant County or to one of the contiguous counties. If you go outside of the contiguous counties, then you get all the mileage. If you decide to go to, if you're down in the Austin area or if you're over in Harris County and you get on one of those toll roads, you can deduct those tolls, whatever you want to do. But if you're within the Tarrant County or the contiguous counties, you don't, and you're on an allowance, you don't get any car reimbursement or automobile reimbursement.
Any toll or mileage reimbursement.
That would be on automobile. I hadn't seen anybody get charged a toll for walking.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Okay.
Got it?
I'm good with that, yeah.
Thank
Okay,
y'all.
then we'll draft that policy and bring it back to you next Tuesday.
Thank you. Looks like we're to the personnel agenda.
Good morning. We have three items for the court. The first item is to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for the magistrate courts. Mr. Shugart submitted a request, and he's asking for the waiver of 400 vacation hours. This is tied to a magistrate who is leaving county service on April 13th, and the request is that the waiver be made effective April 14th, so the day following. If the court approves this request, we're looking at a cost to the general fund of almost $35,000.
I guess, how many magistrates, come on up. No, I want Phillips up here for that discussion. How many magistrates do you have? Is there not any way?
A matter of semantics, sir, I don't have any, but the judges who hire all of them, they have 14 magistrates
Well,
total.
I guess we'll postpone the discussion until all the judges come over here and want to talk.
Sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
All right, We have, the judges have 14 magistrates, 4 of them are part-time, and then there's 4 that are dedicated towards, to the courts to provide court support, and those roles kind of vary. They will pick juries, sit on dockets and that sort of thing, take pleas for judges, and sit on specialty courts on behalf of the judges. We have...
the one that's retiring, is this person working special hours or?
No, all the magistrates all have the same authority to do anything, so there will be a shifting of responsibilities, and the judges are determining how people are moving around. But the person is retiring, has been a court support magistrate. Most likely one of the magistrates, we have magistrates that are tied to central magistration and managing unfiled cases. Odds are one of those magistrates are going to slide into that type of role, and then and this new magistrate would slide into supporting the central magistration roles. And then we have 2 magistrates that are called special magistrates that come out of our judicial staff counsel office, and they do post-conviction writs, and our mental health magistrate.
So is there not a way that they couldn't kind of help out for that period of, I mean, again, these come to us, and I like to look, and if they're a single type thing, if they're a court coordinator, we understand that, court reporter, some of those types of situations, but when we got a pool of people, it would just seem like we ought to be able to hold on for. I've been put in charge by the judges to ensure that we have the courts covered and magistrations covered. And of those 14 magistrates, I really only have 12 available. Those 2 special magistrates aren't available to me to cover the courts. But we could utilize part-time magistrates and that sort of thing. But it's to support the courts or to cover magistration. It costs, whether it's a full-time magistrate, and so if we use a part-time magistrate, we'll increase the cost of our part-time costs and reduce the cost of the full-time costs. However, we understand that the Commissioner's Court is the funding source. We were requesting the waiver of terminal benefits, so it takes a while for the judges to go through the hiring process, and But you're going to slide the person over that's going to be doing this today on April 14th.
If we don't know who we're going to hire yet. The judges haven't made that decision.
Well, she said you're sliding one of the people over. You said.
Potentially could be sliding. Yes, it's up to the judges to make that decision.
Well, so if you think it's going to take them a while, then why don't we give you half the time, and we'll just assume that it'll take you half the time to figure out who that is you're going to hire.
We're always happy to with anything the Commissioner's Court provides us.
Under that situation, I'd say you got about 10 weeks to find somebody.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll second your motion.
So I guess we're going to let them find somebody we'll just not pass this one. We'll take no action on this one.
Thank you. And our third and final item, we're asking the court.
Do you want us to, you've got that funny look on your face, Mr. Manius. Do you want us to basically say no?
No, that look just happens to appear every Tuesday, so.
Just wanted to be sure about that.
That's his permanent look on Tuesday.
Tim Tillman.
And I really want to kind of pass this word out that, I mean, if you got a position and you've got other folks in your department that are doing those same type jobs, I really want to try to spread that out. And this not be just something that it's just, okay, you ask it, we give it. I understand for the court coordinators, I understand if you've got a single position and you don't have anybody else that's doing those jobs in that particular area, but I think it's going to be more and more important that we continue to do that and that we, try to live within that budget. So I'm sure I'm going to get some phone calls this afternoon. So.
You may. So then if we can move to item 3, we're asking the court to approve the 22nd annual Tarrant County Employee Picnic at Six Flags Over Texas. Specifically, what we're requesting today is the deposit that's needed to hold the venue. That deposit would be $4,845. We are proposing the picnic date to be October 11th, and funds are available in the FY20 budget to cover this deposit.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? we're guaranteeing a minimum of 1,000, and last year we had 1,053 people went.
Yes, sir.
Are we,
We're pretty
is there any-
confident. We're confident.
Okay,
Thank you.
please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Chris?
Morning, Judge, court members.
Good morning, Chris.
We have one item this morning. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the Second Amendment to the communication system agreement with the City of Fort Worth for the radio voice coverage. This amendment is actually to give us a reduction in the fees that were assessed last year from $39 to $8 for those that have voice radios on the network, and then we'll also be carrying wave radios as backup. We have 22 persons that carry those, and that reduction will give us this year over last year over $8,000 in savings.
Move approval.
Second.
Your motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Vinnie?
So Public Health has two items for your consideration this morning. First one is a approval of transfer of computer equipment ownership from South Plains Community Action Association to Tarrant County for our Women, Infant, and Children, the WIC program. So the state usually, tries to work with this Community Action Association if they have money that they need to spend. So they bought several computers that they're giving to local WIC agencies, and we would be getting 80 computers if you accept that donation from this agency.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Second item is a request for approval to submit a letter of commitment to the University of Texas at Dallas for a grant application to the 360 Degrees of Health Community Health Research Program of the Communities Foundation of Texas. The university wants to study social determinants of health and how they impact disease, and they're going to be doing this study in a 5-county area if they receive the grant. So our letter of commitment would be to partner with them. The idea is that if they get the grant, they'll hire a staff person for us to help do the study at the local level.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
He'll be back up in a few minutes, guys, over there. Come on down.
Good morning.
Morning, Chad.
We have 3 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2020-077, signing a contract for fire sprinkler inspections, backflow preventer testing, plus maintenance and repairs. Recommendation be to award a per enterprise basis and a markup for parts awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2020-079. This is a new annual contract for ammunition for the Sheriff's Department. Recommendation be to award a per enterprise basis awarding to GT Distributors.
I guess they gotta have bullets.
Yes, sir.
Move approval.
Bunch of them.
Second.
It's not like Barney where you carry it in your. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is an item in regards to bid 2020-078. This was a proposed annual contract for armored car services. We are recommending rejection of the single bid that we received from Garda. They did not include any pricing information. This is the one where, if you remember, we interlocal with DFW International Airport and started with Brinks earlier in the month. As a side comment, working real well.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
So we will continue with Brinks.
Yes, sir. Year plus a
of
renewal.
the DFW Airport contract.
Yes, sir. Which was just renewed here recently.
Mr. Skinner.
Morning.
Good morning.
We are requesting the court's approval of an interlocal agreement with the City of Bedford related to improvements to the intersection of Heritage Avenue and Cheeksbarger. This is a project that will be funded through Precinct 3 discretionary bond funds.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Are there any appointments? There being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have two items to bring to you this morning. The first is the JPS Health Network 2018 Capital Improvement Program. I'll be doing that presentation. So, for the last 3 weeks, we have been looking at recommendations and communications from the JPS Board of Managers. And this past week, we have looked at the legal and the financial issues that have arisen or that were identified in those communications with JPS. Staff is here at this time to make a recommendation for the court, and this deals with which entities will be doing presentations to the Commissioners Court. After discussions with staff, our recommendations is that we choose four companies to make presentations to the Commissioners Court. Those companies would be Broadus, Jacobs, JLL, and AECOM.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So how do we come to the determination of those four?
They were ranked, except for the legal and the financial aspect, those four were ranked by the ranking committee of JPS. And I believe that we have provided some information to you several weeks ago about how they went through that process. That process included 7 individuals and also, I believe, 3 other individuals who were non-voting members. And they scored each of those. And so the hospital district looked at 4 of them, took interviews from 4 of them. They did not interview Jacobs, but I think after the financial and the legal reviews, we're recommending that if the court chooses to do 4 of them, then we would ask that Jacobs be included in that.
Those were the top 4 ranked.
They were the top 4 ranked, yes. You might remember the I think a 4 or 5 page document that JPS has sent up from the ranking committee, and that's where we picked up those numbers.
Great. Thank you.
Do we are we going to try to get those interviews done very quickly?
Yes, obviously we're going to need a little time to, if the court approves this, we need a little time to get back with the 4 presenters and make sure that, and then also work with your schedules. Commissioner Brooks, I think last court session pointed out something, that this does not have to be on a Tuesday, that we can do this any day of the week that the court is available and the presenters are available.
I would very much like to have this done by the end of the month.
I understand.
So would I.
We heard you the last time on that, and we're going to work to get that happen.
And hopefully that we will be able to not only have it, but maybe have made our decision by the end of the month, which gives us, I guess, 2 Tuesdays or 3 if we were to meet on the 5th. But we've had historically we have not met on the 5th Tuesdays.
That's correct.
So.
And we've already asked JPS to begin structuring the contracts, because contracts take a long time, especially on something like this, so that we're working on the contracts already.
But I assume that what will ultimately happen is that we will pick one, and then there'll be negotiations, any final negotiations or best and final as we go forward.
That's correct. And that's the model that we've used in the past.
Because there was some pretty wide ranges as far as estimates of the contract between those 4 that you mentioned.
Right. So that's staff's recommendation.
Any other questions or discussions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we can go to item B, this is the current and emerging health issues. Dr. Taneja is here to address the court at this time.
So we're going to try to quickly go over the situation related to coronavirus, and
You
of
can take
course,
a little bit more time today.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. And coronavirus, and of course the flu. Even though we're sort of heading to the end of the flu season, we still have widespread activity of the flu. So we need to make sure we keep talking about that. But first, a global situational awareness update. And if I can get a link click, that way we can look at the latest numbers. So the numbers keep updating several times a day. So currently we're at about 116,000 cases worldwide. As you can see, majority are still from mainland China, because these are cumulative numbers that we're looking at. I believe mainland China had over close to almost 81,000 cases, but also you're starting to see on the right total number recovered, close to 64,000 being reported as recovered, out of which 47,000 or so from mainland China. The one important point to understand about that is that not everybody reports when they recover, because not everybody's in a hospital where you can get that information. Most people are at home and they get better and they just go on about their lives. So to see that number being reported is very good news that, you know, we're on a recovery path, at least in China. But other countries are starting to have issues with the coronavirus. And you know, it's spread to several countries. The last I checked on Friday, it was 90, but I believe that number has grown up. I think it's like now 100, over 100 countries. And Italy has become the epicenter of the outbreak in Europe with close to 9,000 cases. Iran also has a large outbreak, over 8,000 cases. South Korea, around 7,500 cases. And these countries are on our travel advisory lists. Of course, China and Iran, no travel recommended at all. And then Italy and South Korea, again, are on level 3 advisory, where, you know, just be very careful if you want to go. Look at all the current advisories. Northern part of Italy is on a major lockdown from a travel standpoint. So various things happening across many different countries across the world. Several other countries are starting to show some sizable outbreaks. Spain, France, Germany, you know, are starting to get some increases in numbers, but their situation seems to be much more limited than what we saw with Italy and Iran and South Korea. The United States is reporting now 761 cases. This is the latest data. If you compare it to the CDC official numbers, they're a little bit lagging behind because they're working through all the states reporting their data and making sure it meets the case definition and so forth. But we're working with this number here. Seems to be that this one's a little bit ahead of reporting in terms of what we're seeing eventually CDC catch up to. So in the U.S., you know, of course, we've had some cases, but a lot of those have been related to, you know, either people being repatriated from abroad or people who were on the cruise ships that were overseas and were stuck and could not dock somewhere. So that was sort of the start of our issues, and now, as you've heard on the news, several states are experiencing their own little outbreaks. The bigger one that we've heard, of course, is the Washington State situation, where there was an outbreak localized in a long-term care facility, and that's where some deaths have occurred as well. Again, seems to be a limited setting. It's not a generalized outbreak in the community where there's sustained local transmission. But of course, it's a, you know, cause for us in public health to be watching that very carefully and see how it unfolds. Similar situations, yes, sir.
Benny, what is the situation on having enough test kits available to meet what is projected to be a growing demand for test kits? I understand that the Trump administration has rejected the World Health Organization test kits and wants to develop its own test kits. Where are we?
Right. So it's a great question. I know that CDC had developed their own test kit in the beginning, and so now, if you heard in the last week or so, Tarrant County has brought testing capability online in our lab. We have about 1,800 or so tests available on hand. And similar numbers are available now in Dallas County, and there are other labs across the state that are public health labs. So our state lab, a lab in El Paso, in Lubbock, and several other places now have testing capability available. Also, what we heard was that late last week, I believe either Thursday or Friday, LabCorp, which is a private commercial lab, brought their test online. And this week, I think yesterday, Quest was supposed to be bringing on their test online. So those are the two large commercial labs.
Are these different tests from the CDC test?
So they're developed by these labs. Idea is the same. They test for the same thing. But, because they're developed by commercial private labs, they might be using a little bit different technology. But overall, the end result is going to be the same. Commercial labs have a lot more network of labs available because that's part of their daily routine work. Public health labs are very limited in scope to get us through the early phases of this kind of a situation. And again, we're very limited in our capabilities and what we can do. We are not the lab for a regular physician everyday utilization. I have 20 people that I've seen, send all the tests there. That's just not how we're designed by purpose. Commercial labs are the ones who actually do that work because there's just a huge network of labs across the country. So I think that's what the administration was.
Ramp up to meet
yes, sir.
Whatever demand presents itself.
Correct. That's the plan, I believe. I believe that LabCorp was saying that initially they were looking to do several hundred tests a day, and then Quest was saying they had the capability to do about 2,000 tests a day in the early rollout. And then as they roll it out across the country, that capability is supposed to ramp up. You've heard administration comments about 1 million tests being available. I think that's their ultimate goal, that they want to make sure that those tests are available for anybody who needs it. We're not there yet, so I wanted to make that very clear because we're getting calls from everywhere. Can I just come to the health department and get a test? No. You need to go to a private provider, and really work through the case definition if you really qualify for that test, because for public health labs, the capability is very, very limited, so we have to be very judicious of how we use those. But once commercial testing becomes available, then yes, usually you can request a test from a physician. It'll usually oblige if you have the symptoms. So that's kind of on testing, and if I can get to the next slide. So I was talking about the situation in the U.S. So again, limited pockets of issues occurring. Most of what we're seeing is in Washington State, in California, and now New York starting to see some cases occur. And then going to we've already covered most of this. Going to a Texas situation. So of course the slide is outdated because I put it together last week. So the current number in Texas is 24. So just to kind of go over the breakdown, the first 11 cases that we saw occurred at the Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And that was what was expected. We were repatriating people from overseas or from the cruise ships onto the Air Force bases. These were high-risk individuals that we expected that they will probably develop the disease because they were coming back from a high-risk area or had exposures. So one person who came back from Wuhan, China, developed a case there, and then also 11 who were brought back from the cruise ships. So that was, again, a very limited setting, and not all of them are Texas residents because they were being just held there for a facility to hold and quarantine those individuals there. So then the situation started to change. We started to get reports out of Fort Bend County, out of Harris County, out of City of Houston, and there are now about 12 cases in that area, in that part of Texas. And they're all related to a Nile River cruise in Egypt. And then, that was all, again, a limited setting. These folks are in the community, but they were all tied to one particular travel-related incident. And of course, Harris County and Fort Bend County, and I believe City of Houston and Montgomery County are all working together to make sure that all the contact tracing is done. Everybody who's probably in contact with these individuals has been notified. So they're doing all the public health efforts that we need to be doing in those early stages. And then just yesterday, it was announced that Collin County in our DFW Metroplex has found one case where the person traveled to California, came back, and developed some symptoms, and then ended up testing positive for the disease. So what that does is it now brings it home. It's in our metroplex. We're all in the same metro area. So again, a lot of questions and interest from the public and from our stakeholders in the community. Now that it's here in the DFW metro area, what should we be doing? And the idea is that as a community, we need to be preparing for more cases to occur. It is only natural. We're a large metro area, lots of people traveling and coming and going to a lot of places. So with that in mind, just wanted to give you a quick update that we have been hosting a lot of regular conference calls. So there is a large stakeholder call that we host every Monday morning now. So for 2 weeks in a row, we've been doing that. And that's a level setting call, so everybody has the same understanding of what is going on. And then we've had several breakout calls with individual stakeholder groups like school districts, colleges, universities, medical providers, ambulance companies, city managers. I mean, the list is long, where we've tried to reach out to a lot of partners in the community to go over their planning considerations and questions they may have on how to deal with a potential large-scale outbreak if it were to occur in our area. So that's kind of a quick update on coronavirus. Resources are available. We have our website that's pretty up-to-date and a coronavirus hotline, 817-248-6299 for the general public to call. So far, still operational during business hours, but as the need grows, we'll expand those hours if the situation warrants that.
What type of calls are you getting to the hotline right now?
General worried, wild questions like, do I have coronavirus? That's the common question. Most of the time, it turns out to be people are just, not understanding what the, disease is about. And there's a lot of fear in the community because they're using Facebook as their guide to understand. And people don't see whether this is coming from a good source or just somebody throwing out their thoughts on Facebook. To them, it's the same information. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and part of our job is to correct that and direct them to the right resources so they can read what's actually happening.
So will you talk about with supply chain demand for disinfectants and things like that, kind of give us a status update?
Right. So there is a challenge with the supply chain. A lot of the masks and other supplies are in short supply. Because, again, supply chain was from China for a lot of these things, so that's been tightened up. And, of course, now, there are a lot of worried well out there, so people have made a run on any commercial sources like Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, you name it. All of them are sold out of, masks. So that's one point that I want to address. For the general public, I know that you've seen what's happening on TV in other countries and people are wearing masks. But what people are buying are N95 respirators, and those are usually very hard to use. Medical professionals who use them go through a specific training on how to properly fit that to their face, and it's a practice that they have to do. Every once in a while they do something called fit testing to make sure they're getting a good seal. So if you are not trained in that, you're wasting that resource and putting yourself in a false sense of security that I've got this mask on my face and nothing's going to happen. So I advise people against buying those N95s. If you're really sick and you have the symptoms, you're coughing, you're sneezing, you can get a regular surgical mask because then it protects you from sneezing the disease out, whether it's the flu or the common cold or coronavirus. You're going to sneeze or cough that out through your mouth or your nose, and that prevents, the surgical mask prevents you from doing that. But if you're well and you have no symptoms, the only benefit I see of anybody wearing a surgical mask is that it protects you from constantly touching your face or your nose. But that's, again, I would advise people not to do that because let's leave those supplies for the medical professionals and first responders who really need them. But again, as you can see, it's sold out everywhere, so people have gone and bought out a lot of these things out of just worry. It is what it is, but the message is that let's leave those supplies for the medical professionals who really need them.
I think back also on the tests themselves. I know that, like you said, you have about 1,800. I think you'd originally gotten 800 and then 1,000
Yes,
more.
sir.
And you're using a great deal of discretion as to when you're actually going to use that, because like you said, you're probably getting hundreds of calls a day.
Correct.
That says, I think I've got this, and obviously we're not set up to test 2 million people.
That is correct.
For Tarrant County.
Yes, sir. And also as a reminder, our lab is part of a lab response network lab. So we cover 33 counties in the Region 2-3 for DSHS. Dallas lab covers the other 16 counties. equal split on population, but we're also servicing the needs of other health departments because that's part of the Lab Response Network responsibility.
And so I think that, we want to test those folks who we need to test, but we don't want to just, go out there and make everyone feel like we're going to test everybody that ends up with a fever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'll be real quick. Cover.
Before we
Go ahead.
move on to the flu, will you just speak a little bit to the fact that some people who have coronavirus have milder symptoms versus others who are dying from multi-organ system failure?
Right. So as with any disease, it's a wide range of spectrum of symptoms that you see. The data that we saw coming out of China and now from various other countries, that most of the folks, almost 80%, are developing a very mild illness, similar to a common cold, maybe a little cough, and they go about their merry way. Nothing really happens. They recover fine. 20% of individuals have a little bit more severe illness, ranging from developing a deep cough in their chest with the production like sputum coming out, maybe developing to a pneumonia with fever. A lot of people needing hospitalization in that category. What we're also finding is usually those are elderly, above 50 or above 60 age group, and the median was 50, but really over 60 are really getting impacted a lot more. And then, what we're finding is that once they start developing these complications, because we don't have a particular treatment available, the treatment is supportive. Some people, if their body reacts that way, can get into a multi-system failure of different organs start shutting down, and that's where we're finding that deaths are occurring. But again, it's acting like a bad flu season in a lot of other countries where flu has similar complications. People get pneumonia and they can die. Same thing is being seen with coronavirus. So that's where we are. And that's why I keep bringing up the flu, because that is here. So compared to one presumptive positive case of coronavirus in this large metroplex of almost 8-9 million people, compared to that, we have flu, widespread activity across the U.S., across our state, across our metroplex, even in Tarrant County. Thousands of cases have occurred, and over the country, over 20,000 deaths. So that is the real problem. And the key message is that what we do for the flu is what we need to do for coronavirus. So covering your cough and sneezes, sneezing in your elbow, avoiding going to work if you're sick, avoiding close contact with individuals that are obviously sick and are coughing, sneezing, and all those type of things. And then, of course, really taking those preventive measures. If you are in a public setting where you have either a building or a school or a business, cleaning those high-touch surfaces like doorknobs and table surfaces and chair rails and all those type of things. Making sure that we have good hygienic practices all around. And that's the best way to prevent the flu, and that's going to be the best way to prevent coronavirus to getting a foothold in our community. And that's what we want to. Yes, sir.
Really, I have a couple questions. Are we doing anything as far as giving notice to our own employees on what they can do on a regular basis to take care of themselves? Plus, is there any effort, concerted effort, from a sanitation standpoint on our own facilities that are heavily used? I know that in the tax offices, I think they're doing some things, but what about the other areas?
Yes, sir. So those efforts are underway. That's the short answer. Long answer is that we're working on a all-employee email to give them some good hands-on information, because that's been an ask that's brought up by several individuals, including yourself. So we'll be working on that, and we're determining the frequency, but probably every week it will go out. Now, public health employees are getting a daily briefing from us, because lots happening and they're busy doing their jobs. But they're informed of what's going on. But all employees of the county are going to probably start getting a weekly email. So we're coordinating that with Mr. Manius' office, and then, of course, through HR to get the information out. Cleaning guidance, different offices asked for cleaning guidance, and we've provided that. And I know facilities is starting to take some action as well. I don't know, Mr. Manius, if you want to address that, or have facilities.
We're working with the court system right now to make sure that in the areas where the jury is and in common areas where that a lot of people come to that location, We're beginning to sanitize those on a regular basis. We're working with departments that have counters to see what type of cleansing that we can do on those counters periodically during the day, or at least once a day. And we're
stair railings.
Yeah.
Well, elevators.
Yeah, we've had numerous conversations with facilities, and that's the path that we're going down. And we've had conversations last week and then this week, and we're doing those type of activities. We're not fully ramped up yet, but it's our intent to become ramped up, so that we'll probably need to be reaching out to you all also in your sub-courthouses to make sure that you're aware of what facilities is doing and what some recommendations we can provide to the departments that are inside your subs.
Well, I would just hope that whoever, as far as the maintenance in the buildings, that they're frequently wiping off the handles coming in, the elevator buttons inside, as Commissioner Fickus said, inside, outside, those areas that people are going to touch as they're either coming in or leaving the building. And that's something that we ought to be able to do almost immediately, if not immediately. So we just need to talk with the people that we're doing that on a daily basis, and that needs to begin to be happening.
I've seen our people just in this building. We do that several times a day.
Yeah, already.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. The main doors of the building are open so that people are not constantly having to touch those. So, action's already being taken. So we're
with
working.
the weather being like that, that might be a good idea, is just for as much as possible, open those doors up. And then also videos, we've talked about that. I really believe that it's critical that if we can get short videos on our different social media platforms, I think people are starving for updates, for information, and they need it from trusted sources as opposed to some of the, I'll just say, more out there sources.
Yes.
From that perspective.
Well, and Dr. Sneja and I already had a conversation about that this morning, and we're bringing in our social media manager, and I think we're going to try to work up a couple of short ones initially and then build upon that. Hopefully I'll have something this week or early next week on your website. We need to make sure it ties it to the county website also.
Yes. So I'll just make one final comment. I know we're running out of time. Flu is here, and that's the real problem that we need to take head on. Even though we're supposedly at the end of the season, it's still widespread. Coronavirus, yes, it's becoming a reality, so we need to all prepare. But the preparation is the same. What we do for the flu is what we need to do for coronavirus. And with that, I'll just.
So did you have any information as far as the numbers on the flu? Are those numbers going down?
Yes, sir. The numbers are starting to go down. If you look at the influenza-like illness, the graphs are trending down. The red lines represent this season. Tarrant County is actually in a much better shape from influenza-like illness. We're starting to see a significant decline in the numbers. And if you look at the map as the lighter colors, if you remember, we were deep purple in a lot of places, and the colors are becoming lighter. So we're heading towards the end of the season, but with a widespread illness, the numbers are quite significant still. A lot of people are either recovering or have had the flu this season. And here's the nationwide data that I was referring to: 34 million illnesses reported. I mean, one case versus 34 million. 16 million medical visits, 350,000 hospitalizations, and 20,000 deaths. So that's where the real problem is every season, and even this year. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fickus, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't have any. Thank you, Benny.
I will just add a thanks. I did receive feedback from some of the stakeholders who participated in the umbrella call, and they felt the information was very timely and thorough, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Talking about the census, we do have a census czar. Russell.
He's hiding over. I had kind of marked down census too.
The census czar, but we had a great census meeting Friday at our office. But in 2 days, you can sign up. You can be counted. So in 2 days, on the 12th, is when it will start, and you will be able to sign up, go online, and be counted. So, and Russell's got this big chief tablet, so he's counting too.
So we're going to ask everybody from this point forward, since next week we'll have been online, we'll ask everybody kind of a show of hands of who's already gone in online and registered themselves for the census, and hopefully everybody in the room will have already raised their hands at that point in time. You hadn't done it yet. I know you're getting close. One other thing that I would just say, upcoming, now we have an audience participation we're going to get to in just a moment, but we did have an election last week, and we will have a kind of a recap. We'll have our elections administrator here to kind of recap sometime, I would say maybe next week or the week after that, to just kind of talk about the things that went right and the things that went wrong. We were talking a little bit about this right before the meeting, and we must have had live mics because Bud Kennedy has already tweeted out about it. We were talking about the fact that we were going to talk with, I'd made mention of the fact that I was going to be talking with the Republican County Chair, Rick Barnes, and then Deborah Peoples, the Democratic Chair, about the judges. He wrote about my comment with the Republican, but I did also mention that I was going to talk to the Democratic one also, to talk about the judges. And so, Bud, you might want to put the whole thing in there and not just half of it.
Oy vey.
So with that, we do have one audience participation form, and there'll be more tweets coming. Rich Diot, please come forward. If you would, go ahead and give your name and address, and then we can't respond because it's not on the agenda. Maybe sometime in the future, what I'd like to do is get Rich on there just to come and maybe make a presentation regarding, he's on the board with Tad, and then that way we can have a chance to dialogue back and forth on that.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Rich Diot. I live at 112 Keystone in Southlake, and I am on the Tarrant County Appraisal Board of Directors, thanks in part to this Commissioner's Court voting for me. And I wanted to give you kind of an update. I told you why I was running before, and it was because we had been hearing, both from elected officials and from residents, that there was a perception, at least, that there was a lot of disparate valuations going on around the county. And it concerned me for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which was some things that I'd overheard from people I perceived to be poor and low incomes. It really affects them a lot more than other people. So we had our first board meeting, which I was seated in January 10th. At my urging, a public hearing was called for just under 2 weeks later, and we had 63 people show up, mostly taxing entity officials. Standing room only in the room. We had about 10 testify. One city council person sent us an email or letter to add to our record on that meeting. On February 25th, I was asked to go down to testify to the Senate Finance Committee hearing as not for the board, but as a member of the board, which I did. And I think you all have this chart here, and I want to state a couple things about this. This is my work. I've culled these information from the other appraisal districts, and it looks pretty dramatic, and I think it is. I think it's worth looking into, but I would say it's not conclusive necessarily. This is just me pulling data, and there may be some other factors affecting this, but as you can see, the red line is Tarrant County. And if you just go in order, the number of people who are protesting in various counties around the state, these are the 5 major urban counties, has increased dramatically in Tarrant County. All the other lines are relatively flat. Now, everybody measures their protests differently, but for the most part, they're pretty consistent to themselves. In other words, Tarrant County changed the way they counted appraisals back in the first year was 2015. So that's the benchmark year that I'm using. So in the last 4 years, Harris County, and they've been dealing with Hurricane Harvey, which I find remarkable, is at 11.5%. The number of people protesting their appraisals has gone up 11% in 4 years. Bexar County is 27%. Travis County is 36%. Dallas County is 49%, 49.7%, just under 50% increase in the number of protests. Tarrant County is up 265%. Now, we are passing the test that the Comptroller's Office gives TAD in every other district every other year. One year they do a methods and procedure or a MAPS study, and then the other year they do a property value study. And we're passing those, and we're meeting our ratio studies, but I've got to think that there's something's getting missed in this process. So like I said, I don't consider this conclusive data, but I do think there's enough, by far, enough there. And so what I'm encouraging, and I will mention this to the board when we meet, unfortunately, the board is only meeting in May. They aren't meeting monthly. I did ask for a meeting for March, and we didn't get one. So it'll be a little while, but at that meeting I will be asking that we reallocate some committed money. There was money left over from last year's budget. Half of that money, as I understand it, was going back to the taxing entities. The other half of the money they've committed to renovations to make room for more people at the protest counter. And if we need that, that's great, but I'd like to see if we can't figure out why people are protesting in such large numbers compared to where they were. So I'd like to repurpose some of that money just to do a study of the process and how we're doing it. So I know this is a public comment. I know you all can't respond, but what I would ask is that you would affect your various spheres of influence to encourage them to, the rest of the board, to join me in doing more of an audit so that we can find out why we're spending so much time. I'll point out, with 208,000 protests in Tarrant County, if you add up all the time of TAD that they spend, and you add up all the people who have to take time off work or whatever they have to do to go down and protest, the expense of this is huge. So I think it's something worthy of fixing. I thank you for your votes, and I told you I'd be back. I didn't expect it to be this quick, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. Any other business at this time, Mr. Mays?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Then we will recess our open meeting, proceed to close, to discuss items exempt under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code.
I know you have to go back there, but I just want to get that Tuesday.
Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.